Hi, it's Shotzi here again, Andrew Shaw. As you can see, I'm doing a bit of a different type of painting this time from a stock photo of a giraffe. You can see it folding away. As per usual, I am priming the canvas with a burnt umber. It's a pretty standard earth tone. And here, putting in sort of lines separating the different pieces of the landscape. First, furthest away, the sky. Trying to get that a basic blue. Then some distant mountains. When mountains are far away, they tend to be in the blues and violets. Red does not travel great distance, the color red, from large wavelengths, so it tends to be more in the violets. Now I'm putting in different levels of mountain or just field that are overlapping with each other. First, a couple of more yellow types, here a bit more green, and adding some very, very rough bushes and trees. They're somewhat distant, so they're not going to be very clear. And as per usual, as I say, I'm not really painting a tree right now or a mountain. I'm trying to paint where I think the mountain goes. Sticking with my philosophy also of moving around, not spending too much time in any one spot. Here's the closest land, so it'll have a little bit more detail, a little bit more sharpness when I'm done with it. Now what I'm doing actually is I'm wiping off the rough outline of the giraffe, just to clear away some of that paint, mostly trying to get rid of the oil from the paint, so that when I put more color on top of it, it won't overblend. Now very loosely, very roughly, with a very mid-sized brush, getting in the basic structure of the giraffe. I'm not looking for any detail. I'm not expecting it to be exact. It's just a real rough estimate of where this animal fits into the landscape. Also using a very neutral color, another umber, it's very earthy, it's very warm. This giraffe is clearly somewhere in the middle of some kind of desert where things are really warm and really hot. So the colors are going to be quite warm, except the distant colors. If you notice the sky and the distant mountains. And I just cut the mountains right down using the sky as negative space and keeping the distance on the cooler side. As we get closer, things tend to get warmer and warmer. Putting a little more structure to those background mountains. But like I've said many times, not staying there too long. Just a real rough estimate. Now this kind of distant hill, still pretty far away. It'll be more on the blurred side without any specific structure. So only once you get a bit closer, now this is a field that's a little bit closer, and putting in some sort of sketches of bushes. Here, putting in some stones and rocks that are between the bushes. I'm not expecting them to look like anything much right now. It just sort of guides for me. And of course, all of these things are in relationship to each other. So when I'm looking at the overall landscape and how the giraffe fits in, I have all these reference points that I can compare. Still very much an estimate. These things can move. As you know, with oil paint, you can easily paint over, you can wipe off. Very flexible medium. Just getting a little bit of value differentiation. In this closer hill, now back to the further hill. And really resisting the temptation to do things in too much detail. Cameras can capture things in great detail, even at great distances. When working from a photograph, I like to remember what's far away, what's close by. Things that are far away are not going to be sharp. They're going to be blurred, even if the camera captures them in a sharp way. As we get closer, of course, things can be very sharp. And the giraffe is probably the closest thing in the entire drawing. Putting in some little twigs and branches and little tiny sort of tree, but certainly not very large. These are all now at the same plane as the giraffe. So the level of detail will ultimately be roughly the same, which will help the viewer understand that they're the same distance. Giving the giraffe some basic color. Giraffes tend to be a kind of orange-yellow. I make it often at the beginning a little bit darker, then I can put highlights on top of it, lighten it up. But the darker is kind of the underneath of fur. Giraffes have very short hair on their fur, but still, as it gets closer to the skin, it will be darker. As it gets closer to the surface, away from the skin, it will be lighter. So putting the darks in first makes sense because then I can put lights on top of it and it'll have more of a realistic look. I think that's about it for this first video. I hope you enjoyed, and there will be a couple of follow-ups on this giraffe. They should be coming out shortly. Thank you.